Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome to the GBV AOR Community of Practice webinar. Today, we're going to be looking at gender-based violence from the perspective of women-led organizations. We're going to hear all about the Call to Action Field Initiative Baseline Study. So before I turn it over to all of the people who will be speaking with you today, I first want to introduce the GBV AOR Community of Practice. So we are part of the global GBV area of responsibility through the Global Protection Cluster. And the GBV AOR COP, as we call it, is a community of almost 1,000 GBV and emergency specialists from around the world. We offer a virtual platform for GBV specialists to get together to support each other. And we also offer webinars like this one, some short training courses, and peer-to-peer support. Membership is for any individual who is working in gender-based violence and emergencies. You join as yourself, not as an organization. It is moderated by both myself and my colleague, Beth Van. And if you're interested in joining, you can send us a message, and I'll put some information about it in the chat during the webinar, but you can send us an email and get more information. We also want to tell you a little bit about the GBV AOR Help Desk, who is our sister project in the GBV AOR. The GBV AOR Help Desk offers direct support to you, connecting you with a GBV specialist for any questions that you might have. They also produce global literature and evidence reviews, written reports, and a number of things. So you can find all of their materials on the GBV AOR website, which we'll send you the link in the chat. And you can also reach them by emailing inquiries@gbviehelpdesk.org. We'll also send you that. Before I turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to launch us, just a few housekeeping notes about today. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording to everyone who's registered. You can always find our GBV AOR Community of Practice webinars on the GBV AOR YouTube channel, and we'll share that link in the chat as well. Today, we are very excited to have interpretation being offered in French, Arabic, and Spanish. So please go to the bottom of the Zoom page and click on the language you'd like to be listening in today. And then again, we offer a short evaluation at the end of the webinar. So we hope you'll stay to the end. We're only going for an hour today, and just give us some feedback on how you found the webinars. We're going to share with you the PowerPoints and any materials that were discussed in the webinar today with all of you who have registered. And again, you can always write to us at gbvcop@gmail.com for any concerns, questions, comments, whatever you need. Okay, with that out of the way, we're going to encourage you to ask any questions you have in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring it. And I now would like to turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Sarah, and really excited about today's webinar. It's an important topic. And just to say that the GBV AOR, the global coordinator, is very keen on looking at how we can support and strengthen women-led organizations throughout the humanitarian system. And just to say, as part of the grand bargain, also all of the clusters have made a commitment to what is often referred to as localization. And I would say from the GBV area of responsibility side, we really have focused on women-led organizations and how we can look for opportunities for leadership and also provide coaching, mentoring, and strengthening in the different areas that women-led organizations request additional support. So I think from today's call, from this webinar, you're going to learn a lot about barriers that women-led organizations are facing, but also some of the positive ways that they're finding to address the challenges, and a lot of demonstrating a lot of leadership across, which is very exciting. And then just to say the GBV AOR, since we work on coordination, one of our commitments to call to action, which you'll probably hear more about, is co-coordination by a women-led organization. And we started at the subnational level in Somalia and in South Sudan with support from Troquer, and we'll post a link so that you can get access to the learning materials that came out of that, including some great videos and interviews with the women-led organizations and the co-coordinators. And we're now expanding through different partners. So we're going to have IRC supporting co-coordination in Mali, and we also have the Women's Union in Yemen that's going to support at the subnational level in Yemen. And we're excited that CAFI is also going to support co-coordination in Colombia. And you will be hearing from Erica today. So again, we know there are still challenges. There's still a lot more work to do, but we feel like with this agenda, all of us are advancing, and with advancing of all the women-led organizations, that means the work in the humanitarian field is also advancing and doing a better job of contextualizing, understanding, and creating a more sustainable future for all of us. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much, dear Jennifer, and Sarah also for organizing this and for taking care of the logistics. What you've just mentioned, Jennifer, is very important and is what we will be addressing in this webinar, to looking at what are things that are working well with these with this project led by women-led organizations. What are specific challenges that we're addressing, and we're very much looking forward to also have an open discussion with everyone in this call at the end of our presentation. And as Sarah already said, please do feel free to add comments, questions, and everything in the chat already. So I will now be sharing a presentation that we have prepared. Once I pull this up, please give me someone a quick thumbs up if you can see it.
Yes, not on full screen yet though. Now it's fine.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. So, we will be presenting the baseline report from this project, Call to Action Field Implementation 2, short CAFI. What we will be going through is I will be giving you a very brief introduction of the CAFI, of the global CAFI project, and then my colleagues will be diving deeper into the findings of this study, of this report, explaining the methodology behind it, going into advocacy and also funding findings, and those pertaining to GBV technical capacity, as well as looking more closely at the recommendations and conclusions. So for the CAFI project, the Global Call to Action Field Implementation Project, this is a project that is being funded by the German Federal Foreign Office. It is being coordinated in its global level by CARE Germany. This is the second phase of this project. It has, in its first phase, been coordinated by colleagues from CARE US and in partnerships with the organizations that we continue working with. The global objective of this project is very much aligned to the call to action on prevention from GBV and emergencies. And this CAFI project sees itself as complementary to the call to action. So therefore, and I will just read this out, the global objective is to increase accountability to women and girls in emergencies through sustainable implementation of the call to action at field level through collective action. And this collective action is really what drives this project, because we do want to see strong networks that work together on a national, but also on regional and global levels to achieve all these goals. CAFI is built on 3 different pillars. On its first pillar, we're looking at catalyzing increased representation and leadership of women and girls, specifically women-led organizations, in decision-making structures and the delivery of humanitarian aid. So here we're looking at a very strong advocacy component and looking at the humanitarian architecture in general, and really finding ways to having the voices and perspectives of women-led organizations represented. The second pillar is the technical expertise. This happens more on national and on regional levels, where we're looking to amplify the GBV expertise to scaling up the already existing capacity of women-led organizations. And there we also want to look at the design of GBV programming, the capacities of staff, and the implementation and coordination of GBV preventions and response. And then the third pillar of this project very much looks at the call to action internally, if you will, to make sure that the objectives and goals and commitments within the call to action are really responsive to the local perspectives and the needs and realities on the ground. So therefore, this third output of the project is the locally owned CTA collective action addressing the root causes of GBV that coordinates effective response and risk mitigation. So hereby, we really want to make sure that all the efforts within the call to action are sustainable. So very brief wrap up of what I've just said before. We work with 10 women-led organizations across different regions to reach the goals of the CAFI project. On a national level, we work in Colombia, Iraq, Lebanon, Mali, Niger, Ukraine, and Venezuela. We will start working in Libya during this year, and in Jordan and in DRC. We have regional structures that combine the national efforts and try to look at the region more broadly. As said before, there was a first phase of CAFI that ran for 2 years. And this is now the second phase, will be running for 2 years until the end of 2025. And this baseline report that we will be presenting right now is a foundational baseline study that not only informs the activities of this project, but it also assesses the lessons learned from the first phase to also inform and guide the way that we are implementing this project. And when I talk about this global project, it's also important to see who are we actually, because it's obviously not just me here from Germany talking to you. It's a very large network of a total of 190 women-led organizations that has been represented in this baseline study. The networks as such are even larger, but we decided to show you here the respondents per country. So you will be seeing 23 organizations from Colombia, 21 from Venezuela, 22 from Ukraine, 16 from Lebanon, 33 from Iraq, 42 from Niger, and 33 from Mali that are sharing their experiences, their challenges, and also their expectations from not only this project as such, but of course from the call to action from their work in addressing GBV in emergencies. It's important to also note the context within which we're working, because since the launch of this project in May 2023, there have been many new arising crises. We do work in very challenging contexts that not only make it necessary and important to address GBV, to continue addressing GBV, but also really underline the importance of women-led organizations in these emergency contexts, really making sure or being able to working in escalating conflicts and humanitarian crisis, to making sure that even if there is a shift in priorities, to really make sure that the access to justice and essential services for GBV survivors are in place, and to really make sure that even if there are already legal and policy frameworks established, to really make sure that these are being implemented, and that these are being followed up on, and that these are informed by the existing local realities. So this is the sort of bigger picture of what our CAFI project encompasses. And I will now be handing over to my colleague Jeanne Franier from humanitarian in Lebanon, who will be continue sharing findings of the study. Over to you, dear Jeanne.
Yes, thank you so much, Hélène, for such presenting elegantly the CAFI project. I would like to thank Sarah for really making this webinar concrete. And thank you for Jennifer to give from your time and accept presenting us during this webinar. So as my colleague Hélène were saying, that we are gonna present the baseline study of the CAFI project. I will be presenting the activities and the methodology of the baseline study and what are the recommendations and the findings that we had. The baseline activities of this project were conducted during the 2 months of November and December 2023, and where we included different countries, and these countries were divided into 2. We had the focus countries where they were continuing from CAFI phase 1. As you may know that now we are in the phase 2. So during the phase 1, there was Iraq, Lebanon, Mali, and Niger. And the other focus countries were the new partners in CAFI phase 2, where they were in Colombia, Venezuela, and Ukraine. So what was the methodology of this baseline study? We had different key informant interviews. We had focus group discussions. We had one online survey, and we did have the partner questionnaire as well. As you may see that all baseline questions that were related, that were in the survey, they were related to the progress that was made in CAFI phase 1 over and cover the period of 2020 to 2022. Next, please. And then we will, next, please. You can see here that the number of response was very high. So if you want to take in the Middle East and North Africa, when it comes to the survey, we sent around 52 survey invitations, and we had a response from 49. So really, there was a very high response from all the organizations who were invited to fill the survey. As for the West and Central Africa, we've sent around 114 invitation and we had 75 response. For Latin America and the Caribbean, we've sent 50 survey invitations and we've received 44. For Europe, which is Ukraine only, we've sent 31 survey invitations and the responses were 22. As for the semi-structured interviews, we had as well in Iraq 5, in Lebanon 5, in West Central Africa, for Mali, we had 4, for Niger 9, so a total of 13 in Central and West Africa. For Latin America and the Caribbean, we had around 9 semi-structured interviews, and for Europe, we had 5. Next, please. So as we can see that the report concludes with important recommendations for the CAFI project in phase 2, including we had key areas for further advocacy. We had the other one, which was opportunities for providing needed support to WLOs. This is our aim, how to really identify the needs and what are the opportunities for WLOs. And finally, suggestions for the implementation of the CAFI project itself. Because as you may know, now we are in the CAFI phase 2, and this is very important to know what were the lessons learned from CAFI 1, what were the needs, what were the gaps in order to improve and provide better services for WLOs and engage them more in the humanitarian architecture. Next, please. So I will be talking now about the findings regarding advocacy and funding, and my colleague Erica later on will be talking about the capacity of WLOs. What were the findings for on the capacity? For now on, we will be talking about the findings related to advocacy and funding. In this slide, you can see what was the percentage of WLOs when it was related to engagement in GBV coordination mechanism in the previous 3 years. We can see that 60% of these WLOs who were interviewed or they were filling the survey, we felt that we identified that 60% of them, from 50 to 60% of them, they were attending national or governmental working groups, such as on the national level or on the subcluster, subnational level, or at the regional GBV working group, or even at the call to action on protection from GBV in emergency, or other gender in humanitarian action group like the GHA. But what we identified and we realized that even though we have 50 to 60% of these WLOs who were really engaged and attending meetings, however, they were not playing a leadership or a coordination role, or sometimes even they did not have any engagement. So that's why this finding is very important to show that it's not only that WLO can attend a meeting, but they should have as well a leadership role, and they have to play a very important role in coordination. We don't have only to say that, okay, we are attending. No, we have to play a leadership role. And what it lacks and why we don't have this leadership role, it is because sometimes of a lack of resources. We don't have enough staff, or we don't have enough fund allocation to have a special staff to be engaged in the coordination or such coordination meetings. Next. And then we can see and we can highlight that we had a lot of challenges as well for WLOs and WROs when it comes to engaging in GBV coordination mechanism at the local, at the national, or at the regional and global level. We had 167 WLO or WROs who were questioned about this challenge. And what we faced is that 50% of them, why they were not engaged, because they had insufficient financial means. That's what it was said by these WLOs, because they don't have enough financial means, so they dedicate a special staff or a special person to be engaged and attending such coordination meetings, either on the national, regional, or even local level. We can see as well, one of the findings is that 36% they had limited or no information on what GBV coordination mechanisms are there in their country. So this is really a high percentage. And we do have as well 32% who said that they have limited or no information on how to engage. They don't receive maybe invitation, or they don't know how to register to any mailing list to be invited to such coordination meetings. We identified as well that 20% of them, yes, as I said, they did not receive any invitation. So they require invitation to attend such meetings. We had 22% who had a gap on the number of WLOs who can participate, so which is really very high. And we had 6% who have no coordination mechanism exists in their countries. We had some countries who they don't have this coordination mechanism. So that's why they were not attending such meetings. Next, please. When it comes to global conferences, we've asked 167 WLOs as well to see, have you been attending one of these global conferences, these important global conferences? We identified that 37% of them, they said they've never attended any global conference. 35% they attended the WPS. It was the most attended global conference. However, when it comes to the PSVI, we have only 16%, to SVRI, which is 13%. And as you may know, that PSVI and SVRI are really very important conferences when it comes to GBV and when it comes to WLOs who are, they have to attend such global conferences because they will put their input, they will set some recommendation to donors and to states. So that's why it's very important that WLOs has the capacity to attend as much as possible more global conferences. And when it comes to the CSW, we have 11%, the women delivered 14%, and only 4% for the European Humanitarian Forum. Finally, we had 16% of WLOs who responded that they attended other global conferences. Next. So that's why I wanted to say that it is very important that WLOs attend such kind of global conferences, because it's not, as we said, it's not like we are engaging WLOs in global conferences, but we should as well give them the opportunity to have leadership role, to have their voices there, not only to attend, but only to have a leadership role. When it comes to access to humanitarian funding, this is the big problem. We have seen that there is a lot of state and donors who are really committed to provide funds to go directly to WLOs and WROs. And even when we were at the high-level GBV roundtable in New York, and in the Grand Bargain, and in different global conferences, we see that state and donors are committed to maybe 20 to 30% of fund to go to GBV and directly to women-led organization. But unfortunately, the results are not there. If you want to take the example of Lebanon, only 8% of the allocation during 2023, they went to WLOs or local organization at least. So 42% they went to INGOs and 50% to UN agencies, and only 8% were allocated to a local organization. So this is a very low percentage, and we really recommend and need more advocacy to provide more funds to go directly to WLOs and WROs. And when we asked 190 WLO during this baseline study, we find that 15% of them, they said that the funding was very poor. They did not receive any fund, or even if they received the fund, there was no meaningful participation and meaningful funding brought to WLOs. 30% they said that it was poor, and 27% they said that it was acceptable, 10% very good, and 18% good. Next. And when it comes to WLO's access to humanitarian funding, we asked as well 190 local organization or WLOs during this baseline study, and we identified that 59% of them, they said they never get any funding from CTA signatories, and which is, I think, a shame, because we know that state and donors at the CTA, they were really committed to at least 20% or 25% to go to WLOs, even at the Grand Bargain as well. So when we see that 59% of them, they said they did not receive any funding from CTA signatory, I guess this is a very, it's really a finding that should be very highly highlighted. We had only 2% of these WLOs who said that they received funding from 500 to 1 million USD, and only 3% received over 1 million USD. So it's very important that we, if we want to see impact on GBV survivors, if we want to see that the situation of GBV survivors is getting better, we need to support WLOs and we need to provide them fundings in order to have quality services and to enhance their capacity and their services as well. Next. So now we pass to the recommendation. We have several recommendations. I will go one by one. The first one is to really improve representation and leadership of WLOs. And when we say leadership of WLOs, that means we have to bridge the gap in a manner in the number of WLOs involved in the coordination efforts, while also we need to ensure meaningful participation. Yes, we need to ensure meaningful participation and diverse representation. This is very important when it comes to the representation and leadership of WLOs. The second recommendation was improve accountability mechanisms related to the implementation of the CTA roadmap. So here we have to say that we have to have consistent data collection and transparency. This is very important when it comes to accountability. The third one, it was to shift towards a partnership-based approach. When we say this, we have to in operations of the CTA, we have to move away from top-down management and embrace a partnership-based approach that recognize the expertise and the leadership of WLOs. Finally, we have to increase humanitarian funding to WLOs for GBV work. So addressing the key barriers that have inhibited WLO access to funding, this is very important to overcome these barriers and to consider activities to increase understanding of the actual capacities of WLOs and to explore opportunities to create additional pathways for funding WLOs. Next. And then we go to prioritize efforts aimed at building the independence and sustainability of WLOs. Yes, as the lack of funding is a critical issue for many WLOs, as we said previously, and in terms of their ability to participate in GBV coordination mechanism and overall sustainability. Enhance networking opportunities. It's very important to really enhance the networking opportunities because this is a way to create more funding for WLOs. And then to create trust-building initiatives and to foster trust and understanding between WLOs and other stakeholders, such states, donors, INGOs, and other stakeholders as well. Finally, to provide accessible information and regular updates. So since lack of information is one of the key barriers of WLOs that they face in participating in GBV coordination mechanism and accessing to fund. Thank you. This is from my side. If you have any question, please, you can have them on the chat or later on during the Q&A. And now I leave the floor to my colleague, Erica from Colombia. The floor is yours, Erica.
Hi, Erica. Can you unmute yourself?
Hola.
Hi, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I was saying that for us it's a very interesting process, the process that we have been working the last months, all in this collaboration between countries and understanding all these challenges that we faced as that we have been faced for a long time as organizations, but at the same time to show and see how our strong points. And since that point, I'm going to present this part. Thank you. Maybe next one, please. So what we find in this process was understanding that we find different kinds of strengths that the women-led organizations could have. Organizational capacities, technical capacities related with gender-based violence, funding strategies, strong and diverse and local and national networking, and of course, a very close understanding about the context. But at the same time, this is not something that we could find in all the organizations, and some of these strengths for another organizations can be challenges. And in that sense, we could see that the processes that we have seen is the technical capacities related with gender-based violence in general are very strong, but the other qualities that the organization needs for being sustainable or for doing the great job that they are doing are based in another pillars like organizational capacities or funding strategies. And we saw diversity levels of development between the women-led organizations and between the countries. And in that sense, we find at the same time similar consequences related with the humanitarian system, especially the way to access to funds. And at the same time, that is something that is very powerful, and it's the way that even if you are in Colombia or in Lebanon, or if you are in MENA, at the same time you have different contexts where the nexus is very present, but at the same time we face the similar challenges related with funding strategies, related with the way that we communicate and we are part of the humanitarian system, and the way that the services for the victims are given. And in that sense, there is a lot of space for support and for receiving support related with these challenges. Next one, please. So one of the most interesting things that we find is the 190 organizations that we were consulted. 92% of them have personal training in gender-based violence. And that's something very interesting, because this cohort is a very specialized cohort based in organizations that are working with gender-based violence victims and survivors. And that implies that a lot of the organizations have put a lot of efforts for having trained and capacity and very able and capacity personnel. And at the same time, we saw that the same process is not something that could be maintained and permanent into the organizations because of the funding difficulties. 38% of the women in the organization reported to have more than 10 members of their staff that have received formal training in GBV. And in that sense, we saw that the organizations could have different levels of expertise. And in that sense, 18% of them say that we have very high level of gender-based violence training and capacity. And for example, some of maybe 7% of them said that this is low. So that's something that imply the process that the self-criticism of the organizations, to understand that even when they have a lot of people working in gender-based violence, trained with a lot of experience, at the same time there are few areas where the support is needed, and where there are a lot of space for evolving this capacity related with gender-based violence. Next one, please. So one of the things that was very interesting was to see that a lot of our organizations work with a voluntary process. As Jan said, a lot of the organizations don't have financial support for having all the processes, all the strategies, all the months of the year. And some of the organizations has to work especially with volunteers. And in that sense, there is a lot of work for training these people who is part of the organization, but is not part of the staff of the organizations. And in that sense, we find that work that UN system, agencies, and other organizations support for doing informal training is something really important. And what we saw that is there is some kind of areas that are more connected with this kind of training: prevention strategies, minimum standards in gender-based violence, laws and regulation in gender-based violence, crisis intervention, data collection, and response and survivor support. And I want to show that these three areas, the crisis intervention, data collection, and response and survivor support, maybe are the areas that are not sufficient supported, and it's something that it could be very important for continuing improving. Next one. Something that the organization are asking for improving their capacities and for strengthening these capacities is some kind of interest related to strategies for working better the intersectionality. The 26 of the organizations ask this kind of processes. For example, for this project that has, CAFI has a lot of training processes and strengthening capacity processes. And they asked about these subjects for we could develop actions in this area. Trauma-informed care is something that is perceived as very important subject for working, community engagement, cultural sensitivity, and peer support and counseling. And that is something that is connected basically with the community processes that the women-led organizations are doing for prevention and mitigation of risk on the field. But at the same time, with another situation that we have seen and realized, that is the need of support in psychosocial processes for the people who are part of the organizations. Even the care of caring or the peer support related with mental health and psychosocial support, it's something that it's very important, and it's something that in general is not part of the processes of strengthening into this process that sometimes the organizations receive from other organizations like international NGOs or UN system. Next one. So one of the things that was very interesting related with this is the capacity related with gender-based violence is very high. There are a lot of competences, knowledge, experience, good practices that a lot of the organizations could share with others and could have developed with the time, sometimes between different kinds of projects, sometimes between the processes that experience of the people who are building each organization. But at the same time, there is something that is a big challenge, and it's the sustainability. The women-led organizations are the base of the processes that the community have received for prevention and sometimes mitigation, and sometimes even services specialized on the field. And in that sense, it's very complex situation of a lot of the organizations, because as they have, or as we have, this financial challenge for funding our processes, for funding our sustainability, what we see is there is a lot of not balance and continue work, because the people who are part of the organization sometimes has a lot of mobility. The women-led organizations have then the knowledge and experience in a local and national level, and that's something that is a base and very important part of the work of art and other stakeholders that are part of the humanitarian system. At the same time, the community it's very connected with the women-led organizations, and the women-led organizations knows a lot about the community and keep alive the connections and the support, even when the projects, even when the money is gone, and when the phases of intervention of the another humanitarian actors are leaving the spaces. And women-led organizations continue doing their work, even without money, even without all the team for supporting the work. And that sometimes that becomes the work in a voluntary work, where because it's not doable to be in the context to see what is happening and not to do nothing. No? So another thing that we saw is the diversity of levels of capacity in technical approach versus organizational structure. That's something that is something that is very common in all the countries, and is a lot of work for developing, strengthening and developing expertise and developing actions for gender-based violence, but not as much for developing organizational structure and structure for looking for funds. And that imply that unbalanced processes that put the organizations in a risk. Organizational capacity, administrative and financial, have a very big impact in the services developed, because if you don't have the money for continue doing their work, that imply a process that is cut, or the process that cannot continue. And in that sense, of course, to work in that area, to work in this improvement, could do a good process for improving the technical and the process that is on the field. And in that sense, I want to refer that in general, the organizations has to create ways to sustainability, because and sometimes it's not easy to do it without support. And a lot of the organizations are always with the risk to finalize the life of the organizations. We listen a lot with the women-led organizations that they are facing to continue open. They are struggling to get the next project, and that's something that implies a very complex situation for this very important actor in the humanitarian process. And of course, another thing that is a cycle that continue in the challenge is if you don't have the funding, you have gaps of the funding that affect the permanence of the trained teams in the WLOs. And sometimes some of the teams are working with another stakeholders that work in the humanitarian action, and that put in a very complex situation the sustainability in capacities and technical support of the organization. So of course this is a challenge, and we need help for addressing this challenge, because it's something that needs a change of the process, as we are going to see in the recommendation. Next one. Another important thing that was very interesting in this process to check what the organizations are thinking about the funding is the sensation that there's a sense of distrust between the financial actors, the donors, and sometimes the international stakeholders, and the work that the women-led organizations, civil society organizations are doing on the field. And in that sense, we listen with a lot of often that the risk isn't the financial risk. No, the donors don't want to have the financial risk, and there is a lot of difficulties and related with that, and a lot of strategies for preventing that. But at the same time, there is no the same level of attention for another risk that sometimes the women-led organization and the people on the field could have. For example, we find gaps in the AAP processes and security risk, access to services, psychosocial risk that are made because you are on the field, sustainability, organizational cost. For example, all the processes require that you as an organization could have the PSAE, the policies and all the accountability policies, but that imply investment in the core of the organization and that imply core funding. Yeah? So in that sense, this is something that should be addressed in another way, maybe to show understanding what are the risks in different ways and how this financial risk could be the financial support could put energy and attention of these gaps that are very, very important. Next one. So we have some recommendations and that are part of this process, and the recommendations are considered by all the process related with advocacy, related with capacity building, related with capacity strengthening, related, of course, with funding. And I would like that Jan talk about this first one that I think it's very, very interesting, connected with the phase 1 of the CAFI project.
Yes, thank you so much, Erica. Regarding the first recommendation, as you may know, that during CAFI phase 1, there was a lot of capacity strengthening for WLOs. However, one of these lesson learned was that we should tailor the capacity strengthening according to the need of the WLO. So that's why it's very important to have a capacity assessment for WLOs, and then according to the needs that they will be identified, we do provide tailored capacity strengthening, because we do have WLOs who are grassroots, others who are medium, others who are very well established. So we cannot tailor one capacity strengthening for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, another thing that we find that is a good recommendation is the equitable partnership. Now, the idea to put this feminist approach and this feminist approach related with the partnership and how to make decisions and how to be a part of the discussions about the planning, the programming, and all the processes that imply the humanitarian response. Promote flexible funds and core funding, and I think that's one of the most important things for the continuity and the sustainable processes in the women-led organization. And in that sense, that's something that should continue be part of the discussions with the stakeholders and especially in the CTA. Create participatory, inclusive, and transparent network between WLOs, international NGOs, UN system organizations, donors, and at the same time connecting these global processes with the local level. And imply to do strategies, a coordinated strategy for like CAFI, that is the implementation of the call to action on the field. And that imply a lot of experiences that we are going to continue evolving in our process, and we could and we need support for continue doing this work, because one of the things that the organizations are facing is the possibility to do a lot of work, a lot of technical approaches on the field, and at the same time a lot of strategic work, but they don't have the resources for having the processes in a high level of expansion with the communities. Exploring innovative engagement strategies, connecting with communities, provide periodic assessment, and allow flexibility and adaptation. And I think that's something that all the organizations are asking in all the different processes related with these processes based on the organizations too. No? We have this approach about based survivor approach for all the processes that we do. And in that sense, that implies that realize that some of the organizations that are caring and supporting other women are survivors too, no? And that imply to understand the processes that imply not only to see this like organizations that are implementing partners or that are contractors. It's people are organizations that need sometimes another approach, because they are part of the process that we want to transform, and at the same time are very, very important actors that are changing and are facing a lot of the difficulties on the field and giving support to the victims and survivors. Well, that's next one, please.
Just to let you know, we have 5 minutes left.
Yes, this is you could find in this QR code in form, where you could see it and you could read it. And of course, maybe we have time for a couple of questions or opinions, commentaries.
There's one question in Spanish in the chat from Tatiana. I'm not a Spanish speaker, so maybe Erica, you could look at the chat and
okay, yes, let me check.
And then there was also a question from Laura Quarterman about where to find the commitments that have been made, which I've answered in the text, but maybe it's just good to tell everyone where to find those.
Yes, thank you. I can respond to Laura where she can find these commitments. They can be reached in the Grand Bargain report and at the report of the annual partner meeting of the call to action report as well.
Thank you. And I was seeing the question that our colleague from an organization of Venezuela was writing, and is related about the administrative and all the strengthening processes related with these structural organizative processes and that they are asking us how, since the CAFI project, we could strengthen these processes related with that. And I think that is a very interesting question to answer with the team with Venezuela. And of course, there are possibilities to develop, and this project is very flexible to understand the needs of the organizations and organize and understand the programming of the strengthening based on the needs that the organizations are explaining. Thank you.
Okay, there was a clarification that Laura was asking about the individual commitments by agency to see who's specifically committed to fund or partner with WLOs. And then Jennifer is also saying in the comment that the AOR has commitments to co-coordination by WLOs in our call to action commitments. That's also available in the call to action website under the AOR. So, okay. If there's an answer to Laura's question, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, we're right at time. So does anyone want to answer Laura's question or? Okay, well, we'll see if we can get that information for you, Laura. I'd like to thank everyone, Jean in particular, for coming to us to ask us to co-host this webinar with her, which I think has been very informative. And of course, it is a topic that is near and dear to our heart, working with women-led organizations and supporting them. At the Community of Practice, we are a capacity building initiative. So we're always trying to find ways to support, gender-based violence specialists around the world. So we welcome you to join us. Thanks, Helene, for coming in on your day off. We appreciate that. And thank you, Erica, for phoning in and bringing your insights to it. And thanks again, Jennifer Chase, for showing the commitment to the GBV AOR to the call to action and local women's organizations. So we are very happy to see you all. We hope we'll find more of you on the Community of Practice in the next few days. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.